nothing. So, you know, you just put your name down here. There was no attorney, no management.
Right.
We're just like, where do we sign?
How could a music duo rise to fame only to crash in one of the biggest scandals ever? Have you heard of Milli Vanilli, the group that had everyone dancing in the 80s? What if their success was all a lie?
Pin dropped in the building. He knew.
Yeah. So he
Who
knew.
dropped it. So, you know, come on.
He knew.
Yeah, man, come on. Yeah, he knew, you know, so.
Why did their story end in heartbreak and tragedy? The truth about Milli Vanilli is darker than anyone could have imagined. What really happened behind the scenes?
Music was always in my heart, but when you're able to just, you know, combine movement and listening to music and play with your body and express yourself, because it becomes an extension of what you are, and then the music comes next, and then you start to sing, and, you know, this is what I want to do.
Milli Vanilli's story kicks off in the late 80s when German music producer Frank Farian, the guy behind disco group Boney M, decided it was time to create a fresh R&B duo. Enter Fab Morvan from Paris and Rob Pilatus from Munich, two talented guys who crossed paths at a dance seminar. Both Fab and Rob had their fair share of struggles growing up as black kids in mostly white neighborhoods.
But France is a little different. It was more, you know, more people from everywhere around the world, from Africa. I'm Creole, you know, the islands. So we have a more international, and living in Paris, which is an international city, you know, we had everything.
But what really brought them together? Their love for music and dance, which would eventually catapult them into one of the most talked about acts of their time.
Munich in Bavaria, and Bavaria is kind of a very conservative part of Germany. And when he was growing up, there were no black kids, so he was the only one. So what happened was, at first, you know, got beat up on a lot, but when he became of age and felt himself and got into breakdancing.
So, total industry creation from the jump. It all started when the DJ crew, the Newmarks, were working on their follow-up to Rhyme So Deaf. They teamed up with local musician Bill Petaway to craft a track that would become Girl You Know It's True. Now, this song was kind of like a sequel to their hit, but it didn't get the same attention in the US. It blew up in Germany, though. Bill Petaway, not living the glam life at all, he was working at a gas station just to get by. But Frank ? He had the top-of-the-line studio gear and the time to give this song a major upgrade.
Compound was very famous for the quality sound that he would produce out of there. So a lot of people.
By the time he was done with it, Girl You Know It's True was a full-on banger, but it needed vocals, and that's where things get wild. Frank started with the Rocco Twins, American sisters who were already well-known in the scene. He had them listen to the Newmark's version to get the feel, then brought in Charles Shaw for the rap verse and Brad Harrell to sing the chorus. But here's the thing. Milli Vanilli, the people we saw on stage, they weren't even singing on this track. The whole thing was a studio creation, and Frank, knowing he had a hit, decided the singers didn't have the right look to match the sound. So he brought in a modeling agency to find two faces to front the project. As for the real singers, they were kept completely in the dark. Brad Harrell, who was in his 40s and already a session pro, didn't mind at all. But Charles Shaw, he was only 28 and trying to make it in the industry, so he was less than thrilled about being left out of the spotlight. Fast forward to 1988. Fab and Rob meet in LA, and sparks fly, both in a musical and identity sense. Fab, born in the Caribbean and raised in Paris, was the quiet one of the duo because he didn't speak English very well at first. Despite this, he was singing in full English. Kind of sketchy, right? Well, it was one of the giveaways to Frank's whole Milli Vanilli scheme.
She's German. You guys didn't really speak English. So how did you guys communicate?
Oh, we spoke in English.
Oh, in English?
Yeah. We studied English in school, so, you know, so we understood each other, you know?
Before they hit it big, Rob and Fab were struggling, doing catalog modeling and recording a few albums that didn't really take off. Rob even played guitar for a Eurovision spot, and both of them were hanging out with musicians who worked with Frank. They were having a blast, so much so that they formed a band for fun. That's when Frank spotted them, totally mesmerized by their energy. He knew he had to have them front his project. So Frank calls them into his studio, shows them the final version of Girl You Know It's True, and tells them it's just a demo they'll record over. Little did they know, they were being set up to front a project that wasn't even theirs. Dreaming of fame and fortune, they jumped at the chance and signed a contract without really reading the fine print. Farian hyped them up with promises of millions, but there was one big catch. He didn't think their singing was up to par. Instead, the actual vocals on their tracks came from session pros like Brad Howell, John Davis, and Charles Shaw. Fab and Rob were left to front the act, but the voices behind the hits, totally not theirs. Rob and Fab signed their music careers away faster than you could say, bad deal. Frank dangled a 3-album contract and a $4,000 advance, and the duo jumped on it without asking many questions.
Little bit of money, okay, cool.
How much money was it?
Man, it was 1,500 Deutschmark at the time.
Which is,
you know, peanuts, like nothing.
a few $100s.
You know, like $1,000 or something, you know?
Nothing.
What they didn't realize, this deal was trash. Frank was calling the shots, writing the songs, producing them, and keeping the rights to everything. Rob and Fab, they'd get a cut after the music dropped, but they weren't thinking about the fine print. They just wanted one thing, fame.
Nothing. So, you know, you just put your name down here. There was no attorney, no management.
Right.
We're just like, where do we sign?
With dollar signs in their eyes, Rob and Fab spent that advance on hair extensions and fresh fits, gearing up for what they thought was their big moment in the studio. But when Frank called them back, it wasn't to record their vocals. It was to tell them the songs were already done. The vocals were handled by session singers. All Rob and Fab had to do was show up, smile, and sell the illusion. The duo freaked out. They wanted no part of this fake act. They were real musicians. But Frank wasn't playing. He reminded them they were locked into a contract, and if they wanted out, they'd have to cough up the $4,000 advance they'd already blown. With no backup plan, no legal help, and a whole lot of fear, Rob and Fab caved. They agreed to play along until they could pay Frank back. And just like that, Rob and Fab went from wannabe stars to the faces of Milli Vanilli. Frank slapped their names on the track Girl You Know It's True and sent it out into the world. What the duo thought would be their breakout moment turned out to be the beginning of a massive charade.
The thing is, we walked into a trap, not knowing it was a trap.
Okay.
That dude was only looking for one thing, only. Can they perform, and what do they look like? That's all they wanted from us, because obviously...
Milli Vanilli shot to stardom with their album Girl You Know It's True, dropping banger after banger and dominating the charts. The record was a total smash, cranking out hits like Girl You Know It's True,
Girl, you know it's true.
and Blame It on the Rain,
On the rain that was falling, baby.
which basically became the soundtrack of the late 80s. They even snagged a Grammy for Best New Artist in 1990, cementing their spot as pop royalty, at least for the moment. Milli Vanilli had the crowd eating out of their hands with their bops and high-energy stage moves. Fans across the globe couldn't get enough, but behind all the hype was a bombshell secret that would blow everything up. Okay, back to Girl. You Know It's True, the song shot straight to the top, and everyone was losing their minds over it. But here's the kicker. The actual singers on the track, Charles Shaw and the Rocco twins, had no clue their voices were now attached to Rob and Fab's faces. Frank Farian? He was counting his cash and didn't seem to care who knew what. Charles, though, wasn't having it. He was furious. He didn't sign up to have his voice hijacked for a global smash hit. When Charles started threatening to expose the whole scam, Frank brushed him off like lint on his blazer. Instead of fixing the mess, he hired someone new, John Davis, to record the rest of Milli Vanilli's rap parts. Fun fact, the rapper on Girl You Know It's True isn't even the same guy you hear on the rest of the album. Makes you wonder how many people caught that. Meanwhile, Frank locked down the original singers with NDAs and kept Rob and Fab as far away from them as possible. And where were our frontmen in all this drama? Busy living their dream, or at least what they thought was their dream. The fame was massive, and they were selling out arenas, but they were stuck in a cycle of promoting music that wasn't theirs, all while racking up more debt to Frank for basic living expenses. They asked Frank if they could use their real voices on the next album, but he shut that down. Then came their big break in the US. A new label wanted to repackage their European album All or Nothing as Girl You Know It's True for American audiences. The catch? Rob and Fab weren't credited as vocalists on the European release, but for the US version, they were officially listed as the voices. Yep, their faces were on the cover, and now their names were on the vocals too, even though neither was true. When Milli Vanilli hit MTV for their first interview, some folks behind the scenes were already giving side-eye. Their English wasn't exactly convincing, and questions started swirling about whether they were the real deal. Still, they were riding high and even joined MTV's summer tour lineup with big names like Paula Abdul and Tone Loc. But things started falling apart in the summer of '89. During a live MTV show at Lake Compounce, disaster struck. As they performed Girl You Know It's True, the track glitched. The line, "Girl, you know it's," started looping nonstop, blasting the same words over and over. Rob Pilatus freaked out and bolted off stage, saying later, "I knew it was over right then."
Girl, you know it's 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 girl, you know.
Luckily, downtown Julie Brown wasn't about to let them quit. She chased after Rob, threw in some choice words, and got the duo back on stage. Surprisingly, the crowd either didn't notice or didn't care, and the show went on. But for Milli Vanilli, that glitch was the beginning of their unraveling. In a Time magazine interview back in the Milli Vanilli glory days, Rob Pilatus supposedly called himself the new Elvis, saying their success made them bigger than legends like Bob Dylan and Paul McCartney. Fab Morvan later shut that down, claiming Rob never said it and the whole thing was twisted, blaming it on Rob's struggles with English at the time. Meanwhile, the drama behind the duo's so-called talent was unraveling. Unlike the international release, the US version of their album straight up credited Rob and Fab as the singers. That backfired hard when Charles Shaw, one of the actual vocalists, exposed the truth in late '89, calling the duo complete fakes. Frank, the mastermind producer, reportedly shelled out $150,000 to keep Shaw quiet, but the damage was done. By 1990, Milli Vanilli was comedy gold. In Living Color roasted them with a sketch poking fun at their accents, outfits, and dance moves. Even David Letterman joined the shade parade, dropping a hilarious top 10 jobs Milli Vanilli could do besides music list on his show. The duo had gone from chart toppers to late-night punchlines practically overnight.
Pin dropped in the building. He knew.
Yeah. So he
who
knew.
you dropped it. So, you know, come on.
He knew.
Yeah, man, come on. Yeah, he knew, you know.
Frank didn't just pull the plug, he practically threw Rob and Fab into the deep end without a life jacket. According to a Washington Post release, Frank claimed he had no choice but to go public after the duo got bold and said they wanted to actually sing on their follow-up album. His response? A flat-out nope. He admitted they had voices but made it clear they weren't what he wanted for his records. The news exploded, and Los Angeles Times wasted no time with their headline. "It's true, Milli Vanilli didn't sing." Rob opened up saying, "We've been living a total nightmare. For 2 years, we've had to lie to everyone. We're real singers, but Frank Farian never gave us a shot to prove it. It was messy, dramatic, and the kind of downfall Hollywood couldn't look away from." The news spread fast, and their American label dropped them like yesterday's leftovers, straight up deleting Girl You Know It's True from their catalog, despite it being a massive seller. Talk about erasing history. Rumor has it, the label yanked down their platinum plaques the same day. The duo went from being the industry's golden boys to straight up persona non grata in no time.
Well, everybody was gone. The platinum records, on the records, were pulled down real quick. I heard because I talked to an executive that was over there. He was like, "Yo, man, when that happened, it was like, clack, clack, clack."
So, you guys are on.
Then came the Grammy drama. Their award for Best New Artist, yanked. It was the first time the Grammys ever took one back, and honestly, it was brutal. Fab and Rob tried to save face with a packed press conference in LA, where over 100 journalists showed up.
Because
Guys, look this way.
At one point, they even tried to give back their Grammys in this sarcastic, almost mocking way, saying the real credit should go to the session singers, Brad Howell and others. who did the actual work. But the Recording Academy didn't see the humor. Instead, they made history by snatching the award back, making Rob and Fab the first artists to ever have a Grammy revoked.
Phone calls, enormous rumors that you don't sing on the record. You have to lip sync in front of 500 million people. Right, if you don't lip sync right, it's like oil on a fire. So we were like...
Once the truth came out, lawsuits started flying left and right. Fans who felt duped weren't having it and took Arista Records, Fab, and Rob to court. One case out of Ohio even demanded refunds for people who'd bought Girl You Know It's True. Turns out there were plenty of folks in line for payback. Things got messy with settlements too. At first, they tried offering refunds as credits for other Arista albums, like, sorry, here's more of our stuff. But that didn't fly. Eventually, they landed on a deal where fans could get their money back for Milli Vanilli albums and concert tickets. Bonus, you got to keep the records. Over 10 million people were eligible, and it was a whole process until the refund window closed. Safe to say, the fallout wasn't cheap. Just when you thought it couldn't get messier, December 1990 brought another bombshell. David Clayton Thomas, the guy behind Blood, Sweat and Tears' hit Spinning Wheel, came in swinging with a lawsuit. He claimed Milli Vanilli's All or Nothing had straight up lifted his melody. Talk about drama. Fast forward to the 2023 Milli Vanilli documentary, and the duo opened up about why they even signed up for Farian's scheme. It was their ticket out of poverty. The film doesn't exactly give them a pass, but does call out how many people were in on the scam, while Rob and Fab took the full hit. Morvan, reflecting on the whole mess, said, "Everyone thought they had the story down, but trust me, they didn't." Story doesn't end there. The Moment of Truth was supposed to be Milli Vanilli's big follow-up to All or Nothing, or Girl You Know It's True in the US. But after the whole lip-sync scandal exploded, producer Frank Farian came in with a twist. He created a new group called The Real Milli Vanilli, with the actual singers who had done the work behind the scenes. Charles Shaw, the original vocalist, was MIA from this album after getting paid to stay quiet about his role in the first one. Most of the vocals on The Moment of Truth were by Brad Howell, who had actually sung on their previous hits. And just to mix it up, there were some fresh voices too, like Icy Bro on Hard as Hell and Tammy T on Too Late, True Love. Looks like the real talent was finally getting the spotlight. The album cover for The Moment of Truth had a new crew front and center: Brad Howell, Icy Bro, Ray Horton, Gina Muhammad, and John Davis. Originally, it was supposed to be called Keep On Running. Yep, that's also the title of the first single. But when the album dropped, it had a different title on the front, with Keep On Running still showing up on the spine. The album didn't make it big in the US, but it did drop in Brazil, Europe, Asia, and New Zealand. It even hit the top 20 in Germany. The Real Milli Vanilli dropped 3 singles, and one of them, Keep On Running, even made it to number 4 on the German charts. Talk about a comeback, right? One track from the album, When I Die, written by Diane Warren, ended up getting a lot of attention. It was covered by multiple artists, including Farian's own group, No Mercy. The song also made its way onto the soundtrack of the Brazilian soap opera Lua Cheia de Amor, and even got some radio play in Brazil. Another Warren penned song on the album, Tell Me Where It Hurts, was picked up by Christian singer Kathy Trocoli and turned into a single a few years later. Talk about some serious songwriting staying power. Rob and Fab weren't backing down from the drama. They even took part in a carefree sugarless gum commercial that poked fun at their lip-syncing scandal. And if that wasn't enough, they made animated appearances in The Adventures of Super Mario Bros. 3 Factorial, they also signed with a PR firm aiming to break into acting. Pilatus told the LA Times they were ready to make the jump, saying, "We think we could be actors. We got a lot of practice in Milli Vanilli, but the main focus is our new album." The duo moved to LA, signed with Joss Entertainment, and got manager Sandy Gallen on board. Looks like they were trying to turn the page. Rob and Fab tried to make a comeback with their album Rob and Fab, which dropped in 1993. It was financed by Taj Records, but the whole thing got held back by some serious financial issues. Most of the songs were written by Kenny Taylor and Fab Morvan, with the duo providing the vocals. The album was produced by Werner Schuler, a German bassist and songwriter. They managed to get a single, We Can Get It On, out to radio before the album dropped. But honestly, it was all downhill from there.
Girl, if I told you once what I feel for you.
Poor promotion, limited distribution, and the lingering fallout from the lip sync scandal made sure the album flopped hard. It only sold about 2,000 copies. Talk about a major flop. In an attempt to make a comeback, Farian agreed to produce a new Milli Vanilli album with Rob Pilatus and Fab Morvan on lead vocals in 1997. This led to the 1998 album Back and in Attack, where some of the original studio singers even teamed up with the duo to help them regain some of their lost fame. But things quickly went downhill for Pilatus. He struggled with personal issues, turning to drugs and getting caught up in a series of assaults and robberies. He was sentenced to jail and rehab, but just before the album's promo tour kicked off, Pilatus was found dead in a hotel room in Frankfurt. The cause? A suspected mix of alcohol and prescription drugs. Sadly, his death was ruled accidental.
You're the one I think about most every time. When they crack your smile and everything they do.
After everything went down, Morvan switched gears big time. He became a session musician, hit the stage as a public speaker, and started working on his own music. By the late 90s, he was spinning tracks as a DJ at Keys Samem, and he even rocked a sold-out crowd of 50,000 at Wango Tango in Dodger Stadium. The early 2000s saw him touring and snagging a pretty cool gig as the very first performer at the Velvet Lounge in Orlando's Hard Rock Hotel. Then in 2003, he dropped his first solo album, Love Revolution, making it clear he wasn't done chasing his music dreams. In 2011, Morvan dropped a single called Anytime on iTunes, making a quiet but confident move back into the music scene. A few years later, in 2015, TMZ spilled that he was teaming up with John Davis, yep, one of the original Milli Vanilli voices, on a project called Face Meets Voice Fast, forward to 2016, and Morvan popped up in a KFC ad that gave a mini documentary vibe, digging into his post-Milli Vanilli journey. Sadly, in 2021, John Davis passed away due to COVID-19 complications, marking a bittersweet chapter in their story.
Here are two former world-class breakdancers nominated for Grammys who have become huge international stars with record sales in the millions. Well, girl, you know it's true. It can only mean Milli Vanilli.
The Milli Vanilli scandal didn't just shake up pop music. It put a spotlight on how messy the industry can get behind the scenes. When the truth came out about their lip syncing, Fab Morvan and Rob Pilatus became public punching bags, facing way more hate than other artists who'd been caught faking it too. So why did they get dragged so hard? A lot of people argued that Rob and Fab were just pawns in a bigger game. Producer Frank Farian handpicked them because they looked like stars, then pulled all the strings to keep up the act. When the whole thing blew up, guess who took the fall? The guys front and center, while Farian and the studio singers stayed mostly out of the spotlight. This whole drama exposed some ugly truths about the music biz. The pressure to look perfect, play along, and sell often leaves artists with zero creative control. And let's be real, passing off someone else's voice as your own isn't exactly the most ethical move. At the end of the day, Milli Vanilli's story is a big don't try this at home moment for the industry. It's also a reminder that people crave something real, and faking it can only get you so far.